Hello, and welcome to our Philosophical Foundations of Curriculum, Chapter 2. I'm James. I'm going to be doing this discussion here. No partner, so just bear with me. I figured I would do it this way because I know myself, I like to kind of listen rather than read. Sometimes my eyes get tired looking at the screen. So I thought I'd present this and see what you think. I'm going to do this in two parts. So this is the first part of this, where we're going to be looking at philosophy and curriculum itself, and then the second part we're going to go on to the different philosophies and see what they think. Now, starting off with this chapter, first of all, I went through this chapter with a fine-tooth comb, and I just found ideas after ideas flooding my head, so it actually took me a day to kind of digest, just, wow, what are we even thinking of here? I didn't realize that how central philosophy is to our curriculum, and looking at how our ideas and our belief structures actually direct the way that we teach our students is so important. And I know myself, like I have my own idea of the philosophy of education, but really when I'm challenged, what is the purpose of it? What is the purpose of education? Is it to create a member of society that's going to be able to be useful, to produce a job, to do, some kind of means to an end? Or are we trying to really produce a human being, someone who can self-actualize, go up through Maslow's different hierarchy theories? And is there an argument that both can be done? So there's a lot of deep questioning ideas that are going on in this chapter, and I won't be able to cover them all, but I'm going to try and highlight some of the main ones that I found, and maybe propose some questions to you as well. Philosophy for education, and we as educators, involves searching for our defined values and clarifying our beliefs. That's something I would ask you. Have you done that? Have you sat back and actually said, these are my values within a school system. These are what my beliefs are about an educational system. The more I learn about what's out there, naturally, the more I'm starting to see, oh, you know what, there's not just a black and a white, there's not just a curriculum directive and here we go, we have to kind of force feed the students here. Just like there's different management styles that you can have inside a classroom, you can have different approaches to curriculum. And I really started to question myself, what are my beliefs? And this chapter started to bring up some really interesting avenues of thought, especially when we come on to the second part that's coming up. So philosophy is central to the curriculum, and knowing our values and beliefs, we can actually start to create a framework of how we're going to incorporate that into the schools and into the educational systems, how we set up our schools and the choices that we make as we go through, and what work we give the kids, what subject matters we're going to teach them, how we're going to teach them, what books we might use, how we're going to get them to interact with us, how we're going to interact with them. I mean, it's just this huge concept. The school itself has a philosophy, and I think that, and that's what guides their curriculum. I think that teachers can become frustrated, and the book says this too, that teachers can become frustrated when their personal philosophy doesn't mesh with that of the schools. And I found that really interesting and striking. If you're working for a school or a board that really doesn't mesh with the way that you want to do things, you're not going to be happy. You're going to be part of a machine that's just basically, oh, you have to do X, so this is what you have to do. And we don't care how you do it, but that expectation or that outcome has to be achieved. And here they all are. We're just going to keep throwing these out. Now, fortunately, I think that a lot of the curriculum objectives are ambiguous enough that we have leeway with how we're going to operate them. But I think that there is a very critical eye placed towards teachers from parents, administration, and fellow colleagues when it comes to how we actually deliver that curriculum. And thinking inside a classroom where if the school philosophy is to be more strict authoritarian, nice neat rows of individual desks, students not talking, having a more open style, collaborative approach, vocal, exploratory, student-centered style of learning really doesn't become possible, it might be more enjoyable for you to teach. I know I don't like sitting in the rows and just dictating. I like to have the interaction and the guidance. Personally, I think that having that very dictated row really dumbs down the students. I find that my students here in Nunavut, they're used to that. The teacher gives, they receive, they regurgitate. Yeah, that doesn't really always work that well. They're having a lot of trouble to actually communicate their ideas. Anyway, the philosophy and the curriculum worker. This philosophy will guide our actions and how we do things. We almost need to try and find our niche. And looking for perhaps a school, I know myself, I'm now looking for a school that is moving towards no grades, that is moving towards these holistic ideals. I'd like to experience that, at least say, yeah, I've taught it, try a few different ones and see what meshes with me. I think that there's so much burnout that goes on, especially, I mean, back home in Southern Ontario, you know, you get a job and it's just, I keep hearing the teachers and the lack of motivation, it's just the same thing every year after year. I'm not saying it's all like that, but that seems to be. So if we lack our own personal philosophy, we lack our own direction and clarity with where we want to go. And so I think that's key, is that we need to know ourselves, within ourselves, as educators, what we value. And I think that's very important to be able to bring that into the school system. Whether or not it meshes with the school is another question. There's a quote here on page 30. Education is a laboratory in which philosophic distinctions become concrete and are tested. Our classrooms are laboratories. That's really what they are. We're exploring. There is no right set curriculum. What works here may not work there. The style of implementing these. What is the aim of education? Like, what is that goal? Again, I think we have a strong conflict of differences. Are we going to produce an individual that is part of a society, or are we going to produce an individual that's free, that's growing on their own? Can those be merged? I don't know. I don't know if they can. And if we do, if we say the latter and say we're just going to go for the individual to become human, and we instill within them a morality, we instill within them virtues through experimentation, allowing them to explore, wisdom, to be able to see by choosing their own directions to basically help facilitate their growth. Question how you do that, but if we could do that to assist these students to become the self-actualizers that they are, some will naturally go on to great heights. Some will naturally maybe not go on to great heights comparatively. I think inside the book here it talks about, you know, people will become, you know, you might have a doctor or something like this, someone who's perceived to be quite high up on the social hierarchy, and other students who are just pretty happy to be a street sweeper. Are going to be a street sweeper. But will they naturally find their role in society if we develop those social interactions, morality, a concern for each other, for the benefit of themselves, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of the planet. This process isn't static, and as it's quoted on, again, page 30, it's a never-ending process, and the richer the child's growth, the better quality of educational process in society in general. And I do feel this, that the more that we can engage the child, they're naturally going to be able to fit society. But it really does seem that we're you know, sticking, well, they have to know this, and this, in order to become, I don't know, valuable, and I don't see why. For instance, I'm teaching grade 3's perimeter, and yes, that may have some kind of, you know, mathematical spatial relevance to some of the students, but really, I don't know how often I've measured perimeter in my life. I don't go around measuring perimeter. I mean, I can do it, and maybe that's just the point of it, but to see it, and so having some of these things, are some of these things necessary? Are there better or more applicable lessons that we could be teaching them? So the major philosophies on page 33, Idealism, realism, pragmaticism, and essentialism. We'll cover pretty quickly here. The idealists, basically the search for truth and enduring values. What is truth? We find this through reasoning, intuition, and religious revelations. We synthesize, we synthesizing thesis, antithesis. We see that there's Hegel talks about almost like an interdependence, that we know one thing because there's another thing. And that's slowly how we start to move towards truth. The ideal educator is going to take concepts and relate them to one another. So there's not all this choppy, staggered, here's one part, here's another part, not interrelated. Everything is interconnected, everything is woven. So to be able to do that. The mathematics, it cultivates abstract thinking, for sure. So perimeter. Abstract thinking. History and literature offer moral and cultural models, which are great to be able to draw from. Realism. We'll jump down through here. We're seeing through objects and matter. So an analogy of the table being atomic, and this is what matter is, and this is what the reality, the fundamental reality of nature may be, and maybe even further. Quantum mechanics can probably go deeper than that. Is it a wave or a particle? We don't know. Flashing in and out of existence trillions of times. We're all holograms. Human behavior is rational when it conforms to nature's laws. Now, one of the things that started to grab me as I was reading this is, do you notice that they spend a lot of time with curriculum in the cognitive? A lot of thinking. Like almost all the things are about thinking. Why do we place such value upon thinking? Analytical, rational, reasoning? The affective domains, though, are they not connected in the same way? Like, do we have to think about something to appreciate it or to know it? If I look at a tree and I pick up a particular leaf, do I have to think that it's beautiful in order for it to be beautiful? Do I have to think about the color green in order for it to be green? Or do I just inherently know that? Is there a way that I can just look at that and I gain that knowledge by looking at the pattern, the veination? Even if I look close enough under a magnifying glass, I might even see some of the cells to be able to see this. Yeah, here it is. And perhaps there is a process going on, a patternizing that our brains just naturally pick up on. Do I actually have to look at that, memorize the different parts, say this is green, label it, and put it through? And I think that something that struck me throughout this chapter is that we think a lot. And in the mindfulness practices that I've been reading through, the last 12 years I've been studying different Buddhist philosophies, get out of your mind. A lot of the troubles that we have are with our cognitive behaviors. We're placing too much emphasis upon this analytic, or upon this cognitive, moving more into the affective, being able to feel. And I think that that's something that we're lacking quite a bit in our educational system. And I think I should have a link somewhere inside the page that will actually have an article that's written about mindfulness and being able to kind of turn that cognitive and flip the other side of the coin and start getting more of the affective. Yeah. Pragmatism. Pragmatism. Looking at the change in the process and relativity. Our worlds are all relative. What I think is not necessarily what is reality that's going on. How I perceive things in the world. One person may perceive something as good, and the other person perceives it as something totally different. It's based on the experience, and we can use a scientific method to break that down. It's mostly pragmatic. It's mostly scientific method, breaking things down. There's no permanent knowledge or subjects. Moving into existentialism, we look in here, we start moving towards more the individual. It's almost a product of self-evolution. According to existential philosophy, people continue to make choices and thereby define themselves. We are what we choose to be. And in doing so, we make our own essence or self-identity. Hence, the essence we create is a product of our choices. Think about that. The essence of who you are right now, sitting here listening to this, is a product of your choices. So we are what we choose to be. That ignites that we have some kind of control over what we get to be and what we don't get to be. And I think that that's really key, because when we start having curriculums that dictate to us what we don't have a choice. Here's your math homework. Do it. It's not much of a choice if you want to go through the system. So, yes. So the idea behind this first part, to summarize very quickly, the guiding principles of philosophy, where it's going to take us, our choices that we have with the curriculum, where do we see ourselves with idealism, realism, pragmatism, essentialism, and taking a look at those summaries on page 33 are awesome. And then we're going to move on into a second by looking at the different philosophy, or the different educational philosophies.